Strange Brew Podcast, Season 1, Episode 308. Welcome to a Victory Monday, and not just a Packer Victory Monday. Brewer Victory Monday, Packer Victory Monday. The Badgers played sort of a game, but that's fine. But the two we wanted, the one we really wanted, we got on Saturday night and then got a Packer win against the Bengals. Maybe a little underwhelming against the team you were favored to beat by a couple of touchdowns. Looked like they were in control early, and then Joe Flacco, to his credit, 40-year-old Joe Flacco got himself going in the second half. Got a little tight toward the end. Backup kicker Lucas Havrisik made a name for himself yesterday, 5 for 5, including a big one to punch home to make it a two-possession game in the fourth quarter. We're going to break all that down. Brewers and Cubs, do or die, NLDS Game 5 on Saturday. I'm still coming down off of it, and now we've got to get right back into the mines, right back into the coal mines tonight. Feels like there should have been more time to celebrate what happened on Saturday in dispatching of the Cubs and sending Craig Counsell sad back to Whitefish Bay. But now it's all getting back after it tonight. NLCS Game 1. Brewers and Dodgers, a rematch from 2018. And yeah, we're going to talk about Luke Fickell. I do want to hit on just a little bit of Bucks basketball at the end, too, as they won their third preseason game last night. And Miles Turner had some interesting things to say about his first game on the floor with Giannis. We'll get after that, too. Let's go.
On the ground, a chance here. Durham to Hardy to first. Hit time! Yes! The Brewers win! Yes!
Here comes Melvin to the 25, to the 20, Gordon 15, 10, 5, touchdown! Wisconsin! Record-breaking run!
Morgan a smash up the middle, face hit to center. Here comes Gomez around third. A throw and the Brewers win!
Here's the snap. He looks, he throws, it's complete interception. And there is your Super Bowl dagger.
Booker the drive, gets inside, leans in, backed away and stolen by Holiday. Phoenix has to foul, on a pinnacle ball, throws it down.
Swinging fly ball in the right center. Broxton is there, and they're the champions. They have done it.
It's been a 50-year journey. Wisconsin, we've got a room at the top of the world tonight. The Milwaukee Bucks are NBA champions.
Yeah, welcome in on a Victory Monday. Of course, we are going to have your mashup of highlights from the Packer game and the Brewer game, and not the Badger game at the end of this, like we do on Victory Mondays. And we were able to weave them all together here today. Not just the Packer highlights, which is our tradition, but to get all the home runs in there on the final call from Levering on the Brewer Radio Network from Saturday. Got a little euchre we mixed in there, too, that we were working on here this morning. Took kind of a while to put together. We were in the lab late last night and early this morning, but we'll have that tacked on to the end of this podcast as well. Well, yeah, what a Monday it is. So we start with the Brewers, right? I think we can all agree on that, even though normally Packers are subject matter A, B, and C, especially on a Monday, and there's still plenty to go from that Packer game. But the biggest game of the weekend, of the Badger game, Packer game, and Brewer game, was obviously NLDS Game 5. Cubs and Brewers, win or go home, everything on the line on Saturday. Like we talked about on the Friday podcast, what a shame it would have been for a storyline perspective if Craig Counsell, after turning his back on his hometown team, born a Brewer, the bat boy for the Brewers in the 82 World Series, and the player and the manager and all the great seasons they had with Counsell as the manager, shockingly turns his back on the Brewers, goes to the hated rival for more money and a better chance to win a title and a bigger payroll. If he would have come back and won that game on Saturday back in his old stomping grounds in a winner-go-home Game 5 to put an end to a historic Brewers season, 97-win season, that's not what storybook endings are made out of. That would have been the bitterest of all pills to swallow had that been the way it went down on Saturday. So like everybody, my emotions were churning all day on Saturday. That game could not have gotten there quick enough. That was the longest day of all time, waiting for 7:08 first pitch on Saturday night. And we finally got to it, and I think Pat Murphy, we're going to talk more about him and about his decisions on Saturday. I thought a masterclass. You know, we talked throughout the series about how I felt like he outmanaged Counsell in games 1 and 2. I don't know that he's so much outmanaged or got outmanaged by Counsell in games 3 and 4. Like we talked about, I think on the Friday podcast, it felt more like he outmanaged himself in games 3 and 4 with reorganizing the lineup when he didn't have to do that, making some interesting pitching decisions, especially on Wednesday with the Quinn Priester start. Felt like he outmanaged himself in those games, but then it was a masterclass on Saturday. He could not have pulled the strings better. You go back to the lineup, the batting order that won you games 1 and 2. Why did you go away from it? I don't really know. Only he could answer that. Little tinkering maybe for tinkering's sake in games 3 and 4, but you go back to the game 1 lineup on Saturday, and then you open the game with Trevor McGill. Now, we speculated on the Friday podcast maybe Koenig would be the opener. Felt like they were definitely going to go to a high-leverage bullpen arm in the first inning so they could finally, The Rock says, finally have an inning, a first inning where they don't give up a run. But to start the game with McGill, the luxury that Murphy has now is when you've got a guy like McGill who was an all-star closer who got hurt at the end of the regular season, now it feels like that really is Abner Uribe's role and probably is going forward. And we talked about that during the year. It felt like that was likely going to happen next year because Uribe's stuff is just electric. McGill's is too. But Uribe really is the best arm that you have with the best variety of stuff and the sharpest movement and the velocity, and he's got it all. And I think even though Miz's velocity is better, I still think Uribe is the best arm you have if you were to go, I need 1 inning to save my life, and they needed 2 innings to save their lives at the end of Saturday's game. But if you needed 1 inning to save your life, a shutdown inning, and you're just going based purely on stuff, you take Abner Uribe. But the luxury that Murphy has now is you have a closer who was on the All-Star team in July, and Trevor McGill. He gets hurt. Uribe, who was the best setup man in baseball and led the league. I think he led the league by the end of the year, too, even with taking over the closer's role. I think he led the league in holds by the end of the year. So now you go to him as a closer, and you have options. You could use either one, really, in the first inning and set the tone for the night. And that's exactly what McGill did. He goes out there, and he shoves. 1, 2, 3 in the first inning, struck out Kyle Tucker on 99 high in the zone, and then he marched off the mound like an absolute lunatic. But that's what you needed. The crowd's revved up, and I heard a variety of reports of the ratio of the crowd. I heard some people say it was 50-50. There were some Brewer beat reporters on Twitter that said it was 90-10 Brewers fans. I don't think that was accurate, but it feels like comfortably in the middle of those two ideas. It felt like it was 70-30 Brewers fans, or 65-35, 75-25, 70-30, somewhere in there. And you've got them all whipping the towels around top of the first inning. You know you need to set the tone. You can't give up a run. You can't get behind early. And for McGill to do all of that on 11 pitches and then just storm off the mound like Maximus, are you not entertained the way he was using his arms, the way he was gesticulating at the end of that inning? That was the best. Now, I guess it's a podcast. There's no FCC regulation here. Actually, fun fact, there's no FCC regulation anywhere right now. That's the beauty of the government shutdown from our perspective. I could literally say whatever I want on the air, and there's no repercussions for it. We could play any song. We can drop F-bomb. We can do whatever we want right now. And we could do that on the podcast anyway. We're not going to, but if you could read McGill's lips as he's shaking his arms at the crowd at the end of that inning and says, let's bleep and go, boys. We're going to bleep and win this bleep. That's a tone setter. That's how you set the tone for a massive game like that. And it was just a brilliant move by Murphy to go to a high leverage arm like that with that kind of velocity to just shove in that first inning. Then in the bottom of the first inning, and like I said, we're going to have the highlights at the end of the podcast, but the bottom of the first inning, you grab the lead. That lets the crowd exhale a bit. You know, you got a long way to go, but just to get in front, William Contreras, a 2-out, nobody on solo shot, gets them in front 1-0. Then you go to the Miz in the second inning. We discussed on Friday, it felt like, given the state of affairs with the bullpen and how much it had been used and the injuries in the starting rotation, and you used Freddie in Game 4, which, as I said on Friday over and over and over again, I'm fine with. I was fine with either Freddie in Game 4 or 5. It made more sense Game 4. Keep him on his routine. Don't send him out in a do-or-die game, extra juiced up on 7 or 8 days of rest. So I was fine with that. But given where you were with the Woodruff injury and Priester had just pitched on Wednesday, maybe you could use him, maybe you couldn't, maybe you could use Quintana, maybe you couldn't. But it felt like Miz was going to factor in. I don't think that I saw him giving you 4 innings, but it felt like, I think we talked about it on Friday, it felt like at least an inning or 2 was going to be Jacob Misiorowski. And as we discussed on Friday, even though he had 3 shutout innings in his playoff debut in relief in Game 2 at American Family Field, we all know how the last month went for Jacob Misiorowski, the last month and a half. where he got knocked around a little bit. Looked like he was rattled. It looked like he was really bummed out at the end of games when he would go to his post-game press conferences after he would give up 3 or 4 or 5 runs. He just had a sad look on it. He looked like Eeyore. He had a sad look on his face, like he was ready to go listen to Dashboard Confessional. I mean, it just looked like he was trying to wrap his mind around getting hit the way that he was getting hit, and it just didn't seem like he was locked in until that postseason debut in Game 2. But this is a different beast. You know, Game 5, win or go home, the circumstances, 43,000 people going nuts, and he comes in. And I thought, okay, you know, I don't have a ton of ease about this, but you knew he was going to get used. And he comes in and gives up on the first batter he faces, I think 3 pitches into the at-bat, Seiya Suzuki, opposite field solo shot. And I'm thinking, like we talked about on Friday, the Harry Doyle Major League 2, bleep. I think, oh no, this is bad. What was the catchphrase Murph used in 2024? Undaunted? I was feeling some daunt. We were really feeling some daunt. Because you didn't know what to expect from him in that kind of a moment anyway, and then he gives up a home run right away. Typically, with what we've seen with Mizorowski is when he would allow a hit, when guys would be on base, when things would start to unravel a bit, he was unable to reel it back in. But on Saturday, he went the opposite way. So Suzuki hits that home run. I'm thinking, oh boy, this is going to get ugly. And he goes the opposite way. Instead of unraveling, he raveled tighter. And he was composed and poised, and more composure and poise, as Kramer once said, poise counts. He was more poised than I think I've ever seen him, and we're even going back to the Major League debut when he tripped on the mound and pre-All-Star break at the All-Star game. That was as composed as we've seen Mizorowski. And what I really appreciated about the Miz's 4 innings, when he would get big outs, like even at the end of that second inning, he gives up the home run, okay. He gives up another hit in that inning, but he gets through it, puts a 0 up, and I think had a big strikeout to end that inning. He wasn't bopping off the mound. You know, we saw that in Game 2 a little bit. Cubs fans got their undies in a bunch about that, which they got their undies in a bunch about the L flag at the end of this game, too. We can talk maybe more about that as we recap the game. There was a high degree of butthurt among Cubs fans about that L flag and the team picture at the end of the game. But he didn't hop off the mound screaming, Ric Flair wooing, fist pumping. I think we like that about Miz. I like that he lets his emotions let go a little bit in big moments. But in that moment, I just wanted confidence. I wanted composure. I didn't want him acting like they had just won Game 7 of the World Series after you gave up 1 run in the second inning. And he didn't. He just walked off the mound very stoically, and he did that in the 3rd inning and 4th inning and 5th inning. I think he did have a little fist bump after striking somebody out in the 5th inning. But it was amazing to me to watch the maturation process there, almost in real time of Mizorowski, where when Suzuki hits that home run, I'm expecting him to crumble. And not only does he not crumble, he goes the opposite way and looks as good as he has looked maybe all year, tossing 4 shutout after that home run. And I would have been fine with him going out there in the 6th inning. In fact, I thought he was going to go out there for the 6th inning. He was only at, I think, 52 pitches or whatever it was. And it had been a while since he had started, but it felt like you could maybe get 1 more out of him. I'm fine with doing it the way they did it, even though the 6th inning became tense with Ashby, and we'll break that down in a second. I thought you could have gotten even 1 more out of him, but 4 innings of 1-run ball, 3 strikeouts, 3 hits. He trusted his defense, too. Another problem I think Miz had when he was uneven toward the end of the year, it was the Nuke LaLoosh. He really is Nuke LaLoosh. I mean, he really is. If you watch the movie Bull Durham, he's got a golden arm, a once-in-a-lifetime arm, and his head maybe isn't all the way there, and he's got a lot to learn, and he needs a Crash Davis to help him out. And maybe he's gotten that with somebody on this team, but he really is the Nuke LaLoosh character, just here to help the team. Just saying all that kind of stuff. But he locked in, and he was as good as I think I've seen him this year in the biggest moment that he's probably ever pitched in and in the biggest moment of this season for the Brewers. So in the 4th inning, Andrew Vaughn, he's rediscovered the power stroke. He had been hitting for average 300-plus ever since he came to Milwaukee. Early on, when he got to the Brewers, he was hitting a bunch of home runs. That had tailed off. I don't think he hit a home run in the month of September. Maybe 1 early in the month, but it had been a while. He hit 1 in, Game 2? That was the game-tying 3-run bomb. He hits another one again, just like Contreras in the 1st inning. 2 outs, nobody on. You're just trying to start a rally, just get on base, full count. He smacks one over the wall in left field, and the Brewers have that lead again at 2-1. And it just felt like the game script to that point was there are not going to be a lot of runs here. So just to get yourself any kind of lead, made you 4% more comfortable. Is that about it? But hey, we've got the lead now. 2-1 lead, had a chance for way more in that inning, ultimately got the bases loaded and 2 outs with guess who? Mr. Bases Loaded, Joey Ortiz. What was that, the 31st or 32nd time that he had been to bat with the bases loaded this year, and he is 5 for 32 now? Wouldn't that have been awesome? It just given that moment in that kind of a playoff game, the leverage of that moment, and how many times he's been at bat with the bases loaded and has not come through this year, it felt like this is the one. We had all those misses all year long, and now he's finally going to find a way, a seeing eye single, rip a double to the gap. Hell, get hit by a pitch. Take a walk, do anything. Just to get another run home. It felt like that was the moment where he's finally going to come through, and he did not come through. But you do have the 2-1 lead after the 4th inning. And then to me, the other big tipping point in the game was obviously the 6th inning. So they pull Mizorowski. You bring in Aaron Ashby. He has been used a ton. He gives up a single to the lefty, Michael Busch, the first non-home run that Busch had hit in the whole series. And then he had that stupid hit by pitch where he spiked one and it barely grazed the knee of Nico Hoerner. I mean, I'm talking, it was almost like a breeze had gone past. But Hoerner emphatically, it hit me. And then you've got 2 on with nobody out. And again, I'm thinking, oh boy, now you are in a tight spot. 2 on, nobody out, Kyle Tucker up. And of course, lefty-lefty matchup, they let Ashby face Tucker. He gets to a 3-1 count on Kyle Tucker. You are a pitch away from the bases being loaded with nobody out and the cleanup hitter coming up and this whole thing blowing up in your face. And he comes back with a strike, swinging strike to make the count go full. And then Ashby uncorked his best pitch of the night and maybe his best pitch of the last month. Low outside corner, 99 miles an hour on the dot. I think it's a strike even if Tucker doesn't swing. I think they're going to give him that call. That caught enough of the zone. Hall of Fame location, and Tucker just waves at it for the first out of the inning. Whew. I mean, you were really walking a tightrope there. And then they go and get Chad Patrick. But before we talk about Chad Patrick, I do think it's worth reiterating, even though of all the pitchers who pitched on Saturday, Ashby had the toughest time. That was the biggest out of the night, because if you walk him, if you give up a hit there, the game is tied and you probably have runners at the corners with nobody out, and the whole thing gets away from you, probably. To come back in a 3-1 count and strike out Tucker, the 3-hole hitter, in that moment was the biggest out of the night. And I think Cubs fans would echo that. I think if you talk to a Cubs podcaster, whatever, radio, DJ, talk show host, whatever, they would tell you that was the moment. That was the moment where you could have gotten the game tied, gotten back in front, and it just didn't feel like there were going to be many more runs that night. To get that out, to get that Tucker out was absolutely massive. Then you bring in Chad Patrick. This guy has been nails out of the bullpen. Gets a line drive, which off of Suzuki's bat, I almost had a heart attack, a little Shart situation there. Don't look that up, Mom. Don't Google that. And that went into the glove of Chourio toward the warning track. But then you're an out away, and he freezes like Sub-Zero. He freezes, who was it, Ian Happ on the outside corner on the outer half, 96 miles an hour, lets out a huge yell. Contreras is pumping his fist, strikeout looking. You get out of it. 2 on, nobody out, and you get out of it without any damage done. And then he goes back out there in the 7th inning and mows him down. Chad Patrick in the playoffs now, 4 2/3 he's given you out of the pen. No hits, 6 strikeouts. Like I said, nails. And then in the 7th inning, Terang gives you that much-needed insurance. I think right before that inning, I said to my wife, God, what I would give for a run here. What did I give? I'll keep that between me and God. What did I give for the run there? I would give almost anything for an insurance run here. Asked and answered. Bryce Terang in a deep slump. What was he, 2 for 16 heading into that at-bat and 0 for his last 10 or 11? Pops a no-doubt home run. That PCA again. What was the home run? Was it the Jackson Chourio home run in Game 2? I don't quite understand what Pete Crow Armstrong's deal is. What's that movie? Is it Wedding Crashers where Owen Wilson said, what is his deal? I don't know that guy's deal. He's a really good center fielder. He started off the season red hot at the plate, 900-plus OPS, MVP candidate. He tailed off as the year went on. He's got the blue hair. He's got some different style to him. And The second time in the series, though, with a ball that's 80 feet above his head hitting off the scoreboard, he just crashes headlong into the outfield wall, like full speed, and tried to jump and get it when it's literally 50 feet above his head. Unless you've got a rocket up your ass, you're not going to get that. You're not going to get to that ball. I don't understand what that is all about. But Terang hits it off the scoreboard. He knew it, no doubt. If you see the slow-mo replay, too, one of the best things is watching William Contreras in the on-deck circle. Once he realizes it's gone, he slams his bat down and is jacking up the Brewer dugout. Must turn a phrase there. Phrasing. And he's going nuts. It's just a really cool moment when you watch some of the different MLB Network Twitter posts about it, kind of the slow-mo posts and watching the crowd react in real time. That gives you a huge insurance run to put you up 3-1. And then I thought Murphy, brilliant in the 8th inning to go to Abner Uribe. Now, I thought you'd go to Koenig. You had 9-1-2 coming up. 9-hole hitter Matt Shaw. If you bring Koenig in, you have a lefty-lefty matchup with Michael Busch. If it were to get to Kyle Tucker in that inning, if it doesn't go 1-2-3, you have the lefty-lefty matchup with Tucker. That felt like the time to go to your high-leverage, late-inning lefty reliever. But Murphy said, F it. That's what he said. Abner Uribe, like we just went over, that is the best arm you have in your bullpen. You need 6 outs to end the series. You have a 2-run lead, and you're punching your ticket to the NLCS. Go out there with the guy who has the best arm on the team. Forget about roles. Forget about only 9th inning for closers. Forget about all that. Go get me 6 outs. And Uribe was rested. Uribe didn't pitch in games 3 and 4. He had not pitched since. Did he even pitch in game 2? He must have pitched in game 2. Well rested, best arm on the team. Go get me 6 outs. Bleep it with these matchups. I don't care about the lefty-lefty matchup. I don't care about Uribe facing Michael Busch, the lefty, or maybe facing Kyle Tucker in the 8th inning and definitely facing him in the 9th inning. I don't care about any of that. Give me power on power. Give me our power arm against their bats and see who comes out of it. And Uribe did. I thought that was a gutsy call and a great call. Uribe gives you 6 up, 6 down. I think he gave up 1 hit, didn't he, or a walk? I think he had 1 walk. Otherwise, it is a clean 8th inning, a clean 9th inning. There was basically no stress in the 9th inning. I mean, you're always stressed. There's always a base level of stress in games like that. But you get the fly out to Churio. That first inning is so big in an inning like that. That first out is so big to get that 1 out and nobody on. You got the line out to Frelick, which didn't look like it had much on it. And then you get the ground out to Joey Ortiz to end it. He dominated. And then he did that hang-up phone celebration. You saw Contreras do that after a home run, I think, in Game 2. That seems to be a new kind of thing. Some people think that's a nod to whatever Cubs-Brewers game, was it in July or August at American Family Field? Remember there was that footage of Andrew Vaughn hitting a breakout home run, and before the ball had even landed, Craig Counsell was on the bullpen phone trying to get somebody else to get in there, bring in the reinforcements. Some people think it's a reference to that. It might be, because Uribe did stare directly into the Cubs dugout as he did that phone down celebration. That seems to be a new celebration. Brewers get a 3-1 win, and in the words of William Contreras, duh, Cubbies lose. Cubbies lose. Love it. Celebration on beer, champagne, people going nuts, bringing it back out to the field. Sal Frelick, I saw, spent like an hour after they came back on the field walking all the way around the concourse area of AmFam Field, taking pictures, kissing babies, shaking hands, signing autographs, doing the whole deal. One of the biggest wins. I'm not going to say it's the biggest win, like we talked about on Friday. Going into the weekend, I know there were some Brewer fans on Twitter saying this was the biggest game in franchise history. If they lose, it's the worst loss in franchise history. As we said on Friday, I get being a prisoner of the moment to some extent, but Game 7, 1982, Game 7, NLCS 2018, there are bigger, tougher losses than that would have been had it gone that way on Saturday. But that is one of the biggest wins in franchise history. When you consider the rivalry, when you consider the Counsell subplot, all of that stuff. A 3-2-1 win, and the Brewers punched their ticket to the NLCS. Mizorowski got the win. He is 2-0, and now in the playoffs, 7 innings of 1-run ball. That could be a game changer for a team that has injury issues in their rotation going into tonight. The fact that the Miz has been locked in again and is looking more like pre-All-Star game or All-Star game Miz, that's a game changer. I don't know if he's going to start a game in this series, but I think at some point he is going to see bulk relief like he did on Saturday, like he did on Monday. 3 innings on Monday, 4 innings on Saturday. and you're feeling more comfortable. Definitely feeling more comfortable than we felt going into the series, where there was conversation. I don't think there was conversation among Pat Murphy and Ricky Weeks and Chris Hook. I think they always felt like he was going to be on the playoff roster, but there was serious conversation among Brewers fans of, with the way that last month went, is Mizorowski even going to be on the playoff roster? Well, he goes out there in 2 games, gives you 7 innings of 1-run ball, and comes up clutch in the biggest moment of his career and the biggest moment of the year to this point. 3-1 win on Saturday, and the Brewers are on their way to the NLCS. Now, you don't get much time here. Like we talked about in the teaser, it feels like we should have had more time to celebrate. You got to celebrate Saturday night. We all loved, I think my wife and I, basically our entire diet on Sunday morning was consuming celebration videos, home run recaps, victory montages, post-game interviews, pre-game interviews, whatever. It was all Brewers content. Even when the Packer game was on, it was all Brewers content. That's what we were all noshing on all day on Sunday. It does sort of feel like a big Packer win where you want to have 4 or 5 days here to really soak it in and give yourself a chance to decompress before you have to get into the next thing. But the next thing is knocking on the door, baby, and it's the NLCS, and you're 4 wins away. And now it's a rematch of 2018, the highest payroll in baseball versus what, the 22nd or 23rd biggest payroll in baseball, Brewers and Dodgers. Dodgers are the heavy favorites. I did sort of appreciate, so Blake Snell is the starting pitcher tonight for the Dodgers, and everybody had their press conferences already yesterday. Murphy was talking to the media. I think Yelly did yesterday on a workout day on Sunday, and the Dodgers were too. Blake Snell, I did sort of have to tip my cap to. He said, I'm not buying this average Joe BS. I'm not buying this. This team is talented. They've got a ton of great players. Brewers went 6-0 against the Dodgers in the regular season. That is a point that I am sure will be hammered home during the broadcast, especially tonight's broadcast, to set the stage and present the matchup. I did kind of appreciate how Blake Snell said, I'm not falling into the Sisters of the Poor category where oh, woe is me and the average Joes. He's not falling into that. But yeah, it's right back after it tonight, and you've got this giant in the Dodgers looming. Now, like we just said, the Brewers went 6-0 against the Dodgers in the regular season, swept them at AmFam Field before the All-Star break. That was a part of that, was that big Mizorowski-Clayton Kershaw matchup. Swept them in L.A. coming out of the All-Star break. Those were 2 different teams. We're talking about early July and late July. Brewers won 97 games, number 1 overall seed. Dodgers won 93 games. But at that time, the Dodgers did not have a healthy rotation, and they now have their horses back in that starting rotation, and it starts tonight with Blake Snell. Dodgers are the heavy, and I mean heavy, betting favorites to win the series. They are minus 265 to win the series. Brewers are plus 195 to win the series. You better believe it's already on it, baby. And that's how we get things set tonight. 7:08 first pitch at American Family Field. We know Blake Snell is going to go for the Dodgers, a 2-time Cy Young Award winner who pitched 13 innings so far in the playoffs and has only given up 1 run. And he's a lefty, which we know the Brewers struggle with. We know Terang and Yelly, especially 2 of the biggest bats in your order, really scuffle against lefties. So this is a formidable pitching matchup for Game 1. Murphy talked about his ideas for Game 1 yesterday. I don't think we have, let me just get to McCalvy here. Let's see if they've announced somebody. I think it's going to be Koenig because they didn't use Koenig on Saturday. They're going to use an opener. He did say that. And I would think it's going to be a 1-inning kind of guy. Where's my Adam McCalvy follow? Oh, there he is. Have we announced anything as of yet? We have not. I think it's going to be Priester. I think they open with Koenig, and then you go to Priester after that. That's the most logical 1-2 to me. I guess you could see Koenig and then Quintana. Murphy did sort of throw those names out there and said, we're going to use an opener and then probably bulk innings from Priester or Quintana. They used both Priester and Quintana for Game 3 Wednesday at Wrigley, so they're both on pretty decent rest. Don't forget Quintana, as good as he was in that game, in relief of Priester, he is still just kind of coming off of the IL. Priester was your number 2. Obviously, a debacle of a playoff debut on Wednesday. Tough circumstances. At the park he grew up going to games in. First playoff start. Nerves were running high, I am sure, and it just imploded on him on Wednesday. As we said on the Thursday podcast, I expect that he is going to learn from this. I expect that he is going to be a lot better his second time out, and I would think you want him at home. He's going to be at home either way. They did name Freddie for Game 2. I would find it hard to believe they'd hold Priester back for Game 3, which would then be, on Thursday? I think it's likely to be an opener, probably Koenig, and then Priester, I would think, tonight with Freddie for sure already penned in or sharpied in for game 2. Then the day off Wednesday, then you go to L.A. on Thursday. I like Quintana then on Thursday. Brandon Woodruff has been ruled out. There was some hope maybe that he would be back for the NLCS, but they asked that, I think, on Sunday at the press conference. Murph said he's not even throwing yet. So there is a remote chance if you punch a World Series ticket, maybe he'd be available there. At that point, though, he's not going to start. And I don't think, even if he were available for this series, we're probably beyond the point of Woodruff going out there and giving you 4, 5, 6 innings because he hasn't pitched in a long time. So once he gets a throwing campaign started and does a bullpen game or whatever, I would think that he's out of the pen for an inning or two. But it sounds like he's not even going to be a part of the NLCS roster heading into it. And I don't even think that roster is out yet. The full roster I don't think is out yet for the NLCS tonight. I think they have up until like 3 hours before game time to submit it. My guess would be Koenig or whatever as an opener, and then Priester gets the bulk innings tonight, and we hope it's a big bounce back for him after that Game 3 mess in Chicago. Don't forget, when he walked off the mound that night, what did Murphy do? Good teaching moment. He stopped him, which you almost never see a manager do when they're walking off the mound. He stopped him, tapped his chest, and then they asked Murphy postgame what he said to him, and he said, "We're going to need you. We are going to need you. Head up. We're going to need you." And I think he's going to get another chance here tonight with an opener, and then he gets in there in the second or third inning. And we know this Dodger team is loaded, man. Shohei Ohtani's going to win the MVP again. Their first 3 guys in their batting order, or 3 of their first 4, are all MVPs. Shohei Ohtani's going to be a multi-time MVP winner. Mookie Betts is a former MVP. Freddie Freeman, who has tormented the Brewers in the playoffs in the past with Atlanta, he's an MVP. That is a star-studded lineup, and now their pitching is healthy too. But the rematch from 2018, can you avenge the 7-game loss in 2018 and punch a ticket to the World Series? Would be the first, obviously, since 1982. It all gets underway tonight. These are big games. This is a 2-3-2 format. Don't forget about that, too. So games 1 and 2 in Milwaukee, 3, 4, and 5 in L.A. If you drop one of these first 2 games, I'm not saying it's cataclysmic if you lose one. If you go back to L.A. tied at 1, it's not the end of the world. But if you do the math, there is a chance then you would not be coming back to American Family Field. That's why I feel like, and I know this is going to be groundbreaking, earth-shattering analysis, I think Game 1 of the NLCS is a little important. There's a little bit of weight to this one. You would love to set the tone. You would love to jump out to a 1-0 series lead, and then you can settle in. But yeah, if you lose one of these home games, you're going to L.A. for 3. I'm not saying it's a problem to win 1 game in L.A. to bring it back, but I'm just saying that's how the math works. If you end up down 0-2 or in a 1-1 series, there's a chance you might not be coming back to Milwaukee. So that's all the more important in a 2-3-2 format to get Game 1. And it ain't going to be easy with Blake Snell on the mound, although Snell has struggled at American Family Field in his past. I think he's 2-1, but with a 5.5 ERA. But he's been great. Huge free agent acquisition for the Dodgers. Like I said, 2-time Cy Young Award winner on the mound tonight for the Dodgers. 7:08 first pitch, then 7:08 tomorrow. Freddie's going. What is the rest of the series? Day off Wednesday. Oh, we got Brian Anderson for the call, by the way. I know people hated the broadcasting crew. I do think we get stuck with Ron Darling. So Brian Anderson calls games with Jeff Francoeur. From what I've read, Ron Darling is going to join them, so it's a 3-man booth. But we're done with Alex Faust, and we get Brian Anderson on the NLCS call. You should be forewarned, though, and I told this to our B93 listeners, and I think we talked about it on HBL this morning, too. This is a national broadcast, so BA is calling this for a national audience, and a lot of the people tuning in will be Brewer fans, and a lot of people tuning in will be Dodger fans. I would think any middle-of-the-road baseball fans, like this isn't Rob Lowe with the NFL hat on. I think if you are just a baseball fan, you're rooting for the Brewers, right? I can't imagine you're rooting for the defending champion Dodgers. Yeah, by the way, the Dodgers won the World Series last year. These are the defending champions. I can't imagine if you're just a baseball fan, you're rooting for the Goliath of the Dodgers in this series. Maybe a handful. But you do have to keep in mind, this isn't BA on a FanDuel Sports or a Bally Sports broadcast where he's calling the game 85-15 in favor of the Brewers. I think he will give a little edge to the Brewers. I think it'll be a 55-45, 60-40 kind of call. But you got to keep that in mind. Yes, we are getting our guy on the broadcast, but it is still a national broadcast, and he will probably say complimentary things about the Dodgers and Dave Roberts, so just know that going in. But it is 7:08 tonight, 7:08 Tuesday, 5:08 on Thursday, which is a 3 o'clock start time in LA. My wife and I were looking at these start times. Like, if this goes to Game 6, do you know what time Game 6 is? It would be 1 week from today on Monday. 4:08 locally. Like, what are we doing here? This is the LCS. There are 4 teams left with a chance to get to the World Series and a chance to win a title. And we're playing games at 4:08 Central Time on a Monday. And for Dodger fans on Thursday, 2:08 or 3:08 start time. People work. How are these not all primetime games? I get it if it's the middle of August and it's the third game of a 3-game series, and who cares? But we're talking about we're in the championship series with middle of the day start times, on a work day? Why are we doing that? Baseball's done a lot. They've come a long way with the pitch clock and the ghost runner and all that kind of stuff to expedite games. But there are still some things they need to figure out. But it is a 5:08 local start time on Thursday, 7:38 Friday, 7:08 Saturday, 4:08 Monday. And if they went to Game 7, that would be Tuesday, next Tuesday, 7:08 first pitch. Of course, that would be at American Family Field if you had to have it. But that gets underway tonight. Mariners and Blue Jays, they got the ALCS started last night, and the Mariners got a road win in Toronto in Game 1, 3-1. Well, it would be an interesting situation if you end up with Brewers-Mariners. You've got the whole Seattle subplot, the 2 Seattle franchises. If you end up with Brewers Blue Jays, like I think we talked about heading into the road series in Toronto, when you go back to 92 and 93 when the Brewers were in the AL East, and that was a time when Toronto was the king of that division, then Mahler goes to one of your favorite sons who threw out the first pitch in Game 5 on Saturday. Molly was in town. Then he jumped ship because Sal Bando won't sign him. He goes to Toronto, wins a ring there, wins a World Series MVP there. That would be an interesting subplot kind of series too. But yeah, the 2 Seattle franchises would be a good one if it's Brewers-Mariners in the World Series. Brewers-Dodgers, a 7:08 first pitch tonight. I think we got everything there with the Brewer audio. Counsell, I didn't get any of the Counsell heavy size. I didn't track that down. I was more on the positive Brewer side than I was of the Schadenfreude or whatever of the Cubs audio yesterday. But yeah, get it done. One of the biggest wins in franchise history. And now we move to tonight. All right, let's talk about the Packers and Bengals at Lambeau Field on Sunday. First home game in over a month. Had weeks 1 and 2 within 5 days of each other. Win against the Lions, win against the Commanders. Then you hit the road for Cleveland, hit the road for Dallas, and then had the bye week. So it's been a while since they had been at Lambeau Field. A beautiful fall Sunday with the perfect kickoff time, 3:25. And the Packers get it done. As I was texting a couple of my buddies, I think you would have preferred this to be an easier win when you consider the Bengals had the 31st ranked defense in the league of 32 teams, by the way, heading into the day. You had them acquire a 40-year-old quarterback. Now, Joe Flacco's no slouch, former Pro Bowl, former All-Pro, I think, at least once or twice, Super Bowl winning quarterback, but obviously getting late in his career. They just saw him in Week 3 in Cleveland, and the Browns got that win 13-10. Not that Flacco had a great day, but they just picked up a 40-year-old quarterback on Tuesday. He was making the start Sunday, the second to last defense in terms of ranking for the Bengals, and the Packers had an extra week to prepare. That all is a reason why the Packers were 2 touchdowns or 14.5-point favorites heading into the weekend. And like we said on the Friday podcast, look, I wanted to win. I had them to cover in picks. I think we went 2-2 on our 4 picks that we made at the end of the podcast on Friday. I wanted a more convincing win. I wanted a bigger statement win back at home with the extra preparation time, bad Bengals defense, picking up a 40-year-old quarterback on Tuesday and starting him on Sunday, even though very experienced, and I think as we talked about either on the podcast or on one of the shows I was doing on Friday, for Flacco, even though he's well past his prime, he does go to a team that has real good weapons. T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, arguably the best wide receiver duo in the league, and he didn't have those kind of weapons in Cleveland. So for Flacco, who's maybe got this year left, I would think, and maybe one more year after that, I don't know, to end up on a team, to go from Cleveland where he had nothing, where he was fighting he brought a knife to a gunfight. He had no weapons there. And then to go to Cincinnati, where he's got what were the Bond weapons? The RK-47, and he had everything. You got Jamar Chase, you got T. Higgins, they have a solid tight end, decent running game for the most part with Chase Brown. So he is going to a team that prior to the year with Joe Burrow had playoff expectations, maybe division-winning title expectations. And Burrow goes down, but now he goes to a team that has far superior weapons to what he had in Cleveland. But still, he only had 3 days to prepare. So I was hoping for a more convincing win. It was a slow start, and a part of that was the interception from Jordan Love. Jordan Love played a really good game outside of the one Brett Favre throw that he had in the first quarter, where if he just throws it away, you probably kick a field goal, you grab a 3-0 lead early, And that's that. But he throws the pick, tried to throw it back against his body, got tipped, intercepted, and that sort of short-circuited the early part of the game. The Packers, in terms of yardage, dominated the first half, but were not dominating on the scoreboard, which has been a problem in recent weeks. I think they were up something like 260 total yards to 40 or 50 at halftime, but we're only up 10-0 on the scoreboard. So they do get the touchdown from Jacobs in the late stage of the second quarter, 3-yard touchdown run, 8-play, 80-yard drive, 10-0 halftime lead. But then Flacco seemed to find a rhythm. They were disrupting him in the first half, brought some pressure. Clearly, he was still trying to figure things out in that first half, and he figured them out, and he looked a lot more comfortable in the second half. They have a 17-play, 10-minute drive to open the third quarter, ends in a 2-yard touchdown pass, and all of a sudden, with 4:40 left in the third quarter, it's a 10-7 game. Now the Packers respond, 9 plays, 66-yard drive. Jacobs again, a 14-yard touchdown run where he was just a heat-seeking missile. He was the juggernaut, running right through the heart of that defense for a touchdown run. 17-7 lead. Bengals get a field goal to make it 17-10. And then you had the love to Kraft, 19-yard touchdown pass. Kraft went bulldozer, just leapt at the 4-yard line, ran into a few guys, but landed in the end zone. 24-10 lead. And I thought, okay, you've got it now. 24-10. You're in control now. 2-touchdown lead. But the Bengals respond. Flacco converts a couple of fourth downs, and the touchdown was on a fourth down. Jamar Chase, 19-yard touchdown pass. I have no idea, no earthly idea how he was able to catch that pass with the coverage on him. Keyshawn Nixon, now look, the numbers probably aren't going to be great. What did Jamar Chase end up with? 10 catches, 94 yards, and a touchdown. Not a huge yardage day, but 10 catches and a touchdown. I thought Keyshawn Nixon actually did a pretty damn good job on him, given the fact that Jamar Chase is pretty well regarded as either the first, second, or third best wide receiver in the NFL. When he was making catches, it felt like Nixon was right on him, but the throws were precise from Flacco, and Jamar Chase is just one of those guys where if you put it in his vicinity, even if he's got a guy draped all over him, he's going to make the catch. I thought Nixon actually did really well on him, and Valentine to some extent too on Sunday, but that's a 19-yard touchdown pass. They get the 2-point conversion, and I'm thinking with 4:11 left, holy cow, it's 24-18. And I'm starting to feel like Cleveland, where you played with your food and ended up losing, and Dallas, where you had a double-digit lead and played with your food and ended up tying but kind of losing. And here you are, and if you don't get a first down and you punt the ball back, that Bengal offense had scored on 3 straight possessions, and now with the 2-point conversion, if they get a touchdown, they can win this game by a point. Luckily, the Packers respond. Biggest play of the day, IMO, in my opinion. 3rd down and 9, I think from their 30-yard line on that drive. Packers in danger of going 3 and out and punting the ball back. That's when Love found Golden. 3rd catch of the day for Golden. Huge play as Love was rolling toward that sideline. Hit him in stride. Not only got the first down, but put the Packers in field goal range. And eventually, Lucas Havrisik, how about his day? A 39-yard field goal, punches that through. That made it a 9-point game, 2-possession game with 1:52 left. And you're feeling good at that point. 2-possession game. You have it. Defense got to stop. And then you take a couple knees, and the Packers do win 27-18 and get to 3-1-1 on the year. But yeah, it's a lunch pail win. I feel good about it. You put a check mark next to it. It's a banged-up Bengals team that lost their best defender also in Hendrickson in the second half. And you're at home, and you had the extra week, and yeah, maybe you should have won by 14 or 20 or 21 points, but you got the win, you put the green check mark next to it, you get to 3-1-1, you punch out, and you get set for the next week. You want to break down the box score a little bit here. Jordan Love, 19 of 26, 259, touchdown on a pick, quarterback rating over 100, QBR over 80. He is now completing 70% of his passes. One of the biggest knocks on Love in his first 2 years in the NFL was he kind of had stormtrooper accuracy at times. If you look back, in year 1 as a starter, 64%, year 2, 63%. If you're going to be a Pro Bowl quarterback, an All-Pro quarterback, an MVP contender, you've got to be around 70, and he's right at that right now, 70.1%. 9 touchdowns, 2 picks on the year, quarterback rating of 111 on the year, and a QBR just short of 70. So really good numbers all the way around, and like we said, the one mistake he made, it was a Favre mistake, but he did make that mistake in the first quarter. After that, though, he was pretty much perfect on the day. Rushing. Josh Jacobs' flu game, by the way. I don't think anybody was talking about that during the game, but post-game, Jacobs said he had gotten some kind of flu bug. It was a Jordan flu game. And that was the best that the running game looked. And it's no coincidence. You got Zach Tom back. You got Aaron Banks back. Rasheed Walker, who was a question mark heading into the day, he was starting. So you had your preferred offensive line out there. Jordan Morgan eventually took over at right guard. He was fantastic at that spot. That should be his spot. Stop moving him around to right tackle, to left tackle. Stop trying to make fetch happen. Jordan Morgan is your first-round pick. You'd love for an offensive lineman who's a first-round pick to be a tackle because those are the premium positions. You sign Zach Tom to the massive deal. He's your right tackle for the foreseeable future. I think they love to live in a world where Morgan's their left tackle. They've tried it twice. He's lost 2 camp battles. He's a guard. He is good at right guard. If Jordan Morgan gives you 5 to 7 years of really good play at right guard, that's a worthwhile first-round pick. But stop trying to make all the other stuff happen. I get it if you have injuries and you've got to move him around, but he should be your starting right guard now, starting this week and for the remainder of the year, unless he has to get moved because of an injury. But in the second half, that offensive line finally seemed to find its groove. And on the day, the Packer running attack, 33 carries, $153, 2 touchdowns, 4.7 yards per carry. Jacobs 18 for 93, 5.2 yards per carry. I don't think he's been at 4 in any other game this year. 5.2 yards per carry and 2 touchdowns on the day. So just a really nice day where the running attack finally looked like it had looked last year. And in terms of receiving, Matthew Golden, his best day as a pro. 3 catches, 86 yards. Big catch in the first quarter that Love put in the bucket, and he hauled it in. And then that big catch late in the fourth quarter. 3 catches, 86 yards. He is now on pace for better than 700 yards. He's not on pace for our bold prediction of breaking a franchise record of whatever it was, 1,200 yards receiving. But he is back on pace for our futures bet on over 700 receiving yards on the year. I think he's on pace for 758 now. Coming out of yesterday, that did not look good when through 2 weeks he had 2 catches for 16 yards. Jacobs was big in the passing attack too. 5 catches, 57 yards. He's been a much bigger part of that passing attack. That was one of the questions when they signed him last year. That was never really a part of his game with the Raiders. And we know how the Packers operate. I mean, you even go back to Edgar Bennett and Dorsey Levens and Amon Green. They love to use their running backs in the short screen game, in the underneath game, and that was never really a part of Jacobs' resume, but it has become that. And he had 5 for 57, so he had 150 total yards on the day and 2 touchdowns. Romeo Doubs, rock solid, 5 for 55. Tucker Kraft, 2 for 43 and a touchdown. Dontavian Wicks had 2 for 15. I got to be honest, I don't remember either of those catches. Luke Musgrave had a catch for 7 and Emmanuel Wilson a catch for 4 yards on the day. Defensively, I don't know where we're at. The defense with Micah Parsons and that injection of life on that side of the ball before week 1, they were really good in week 1, and they were really good in week 2. And even though they lost in Cleveland in week 3, as we went over, that was not on the defense at all that they lost that game. They lost that game 13-10, and really the defense only gave up 3 points in that game. And then that Dallas game, picked apart by Dak Prescott with no CeeDee Lamb out there. They put 40 on you. They pile up almost whatever it was, 400, 500 yards of total offense. And remember coming out of that podcast, sitting at 2-1-1, what did we say? We said the biggest question I have about the long-term health of this team this year, because coming out of the Cleveland loss, remember I said that loss doesn't change my opinion of where I think this team can go. Coming out of the Cleveland loss, I still thought this team can win 12 or 13 games. This team can win a division title. This team can be a 1 seed come playoff time in the NFC and maybe make a Super Bowl. After the Dallas game, I didn't feel that confident. And remember I said the biggest question I have is the defense we saw in weeks 1, 2, and 3, or is the defense we saw in Dallas in week 4 that gave up 40 points and a boatload of yards and didn't look like they could stop anything by the end of that game? I'm still not quite sure where I'm at on that. First half didn't give up a point and looked like they were back to weeks 1, 2, and 3. And then Cincinnati, like we said, they came out with that 17-play, 10-minute drive, just wore them down, scored a touchdown that made it a game. And the Bengals then scored on, 4 straight possessions in the second half? Score only 18 points. I think the overall numbers are not bad. Let me just pull up the team stats here. How many yards did they give up? They gave up, not many, 268 yards. You're less than 300. If you're giving up less than 300 yards and less than 20 points, I feel okay about that. But they're not, based on the second half performance yesterday, they are not back to where I thought they were in weeks 1, 2, and 3. So to me, that is still a question mark going forward, even though overall they had a much better day on Sunday than we saw the last time we saw them play at Dallas on Sunday Night Football. But you get the 27-18 win. Cooper led the defense with 11 tackles. Only 1 sack, the Lucas Van Ness sack, where he just got a great jump off the line. First sack of the year for him. No turnovers. Team that talked a lot in the offseason about forcing fumbles and getting more turnovers. They were a top 4 team, I think, last year in terms of turnovers forced. They're bottom part of the league this year. A part of that is opportunity, but yeah, just haven't been able to get it. Special teams, not horrible. I guess by their standard. A punt wasn't blocked. A field goal wasn't blocked. They got a decent return or two from Savion Williams. I think they had 2 penalties on the day, and both on kick returns. But by their standard, if that's all that went wrong, that's not a horrible day. Yeah, Savion Williams had a couple of nice returns. 3 returns for 96 yards, 32 yards a return. Bo Melton had a return for 36 yards, so that wasn't too bad. Didn't fumble anything. And the other storyline yesterday was Lucas Havrisik. What a moment for this guy. So we talked about on Friday. Brandon McManus popped up on the injury report on Thursday, I think, with a quad injury. And remember we talked about on the Friday podcast, Matt LaFleur during his practice press conference was very concerned. He called it, quote, a major concern, the McManus quad injury. And then we talked about that. We did the bad Irish accent for McNamee and that whole deal. And McManus said on either Thursday or Friday, after the LaFleur post-game or post-practice press conference, McManus said, I don't know where LaFleur is getting that from. I hadn't even talked to Matt about the injury, but I'll be out there on Sunday. So going into the weekend, based on the McManus quote, remember we said per sources, per Brandon McManus is going to play on Sunday. I felt pretty good that he was going to play. I guess he went up there to warm up, and it didn't go the way they wanted to. They signed Lucas Havrisik to a deal so that he'd be ready for the game on Sunday in case they needed him, and it turned out they needed him. So Lucas Havrisik has only kicked in one other season. He kicked in L.A. for the Rams in 2023. He was 15 of 20 in field goals there. He has kicked in the UFL. I think he maybe even kicked in the XFL. What was funny about Havrisik was in the postgame, they were talking to him about what he was doing before he got the call that the Packers might need him. I guess Lucas Havrisik is a substitute teacher in Cleveland, and he was getting set to go substitute teach for a week before the Packers called him.
Beats me. I was just going to look, so I was probably do substitute teaching again, try to get my credentials in Cleveland if they needed any, so yeah.
Did you have...
strange to you, Lucas, or does this seem
I mean, it's of course strange, but I try to do my best to adapt to the situation. Yeah, I've had a lot of workouts in the NFL, had a red eye last year to Buffalo, ended up getting signed, so I don't know. I'm a little fried mentally, I guess. I don't know, but it's just I treat it as this is just your job and be prepared as best as possible and just be ready for a sudden change, I guess. So. And
he was 5 of 5, all 3 extra points, both field goals. Now, the field goals weren't bombs. They were a 43-yarder and a 39-yarder. But again, for a kid who gets called, 48 hours before an NFL game, to be ready and in that moment to hit all 5 of his kicks. That last kick, yeah, it was a 39-yarder, and you should expect to see a guy make that. But if he misses that, the Bengals get the ball back, and they're only down 6 with a chance to win the game. There's a lot of pressure on that kick. And for that reason, in the LaFleur postgame, we'll play the whole thing. It's about a minute long. This was LaFleur in the locker room, and Havrisik was the only guy that got the ball.
It ain't never easy in this league. I mean, you watch across the league every week, damn near all these games are going down in the end. But the bottom line is this. We did enough to win the game. Are we satisfied? No. There's a lot of stuff out there where we can get better at. And I hope we know that, and that's going to continue to keep us hungry. And we know where does it start? Where does it start? It starts with the work we put in day in and day out, man. And then also it starts with our ability to just keep coming closer as a team. The more we battle together, the harder we fight for one another, the tougher we're going to be to beat. So, hell of a job to everybody in here. Give it up for yourself. I got one game ball, and there's a lot of good performances out there. But I got to give it up to this guy. Lucas Havrisik!
What a moment for this kid. For a speech, he just kind of says thank you. It was not ready for that moment. But when you think of, now we don't know what Brandon McManus' availability is going to be for Arizona this coming week, so maybe he's on the team for another week. But just think of however this season plays out. And by the way, for all the gnashing of teeth, and I've done a little bit of it on this podcast and did a little bit of it on the morning shows this morning where I thought they should look better against that team given everything going into it. But this team, coming out of a win on Sunday, is 3-1-1. They are in first place in the NFC North. They are one of, 2 teams in the NFC with only 1 loss. And if you look at the betting odds right now on any betting app, on FanDuel, on Sports, on Bookie Chad, on whatever, they are the betting favorites right now at plus 375 to win the NFC Championship and go to the Super Bowl. But think about how, if this year plays out like that, where you do win 12 or 13 games and you're the 1 seed, and maybe that's the only game Havrisik gets in, but what a random storyline to look back on where out of nowhere, your kicker ends up on the injury report, can't go on a given Sunday, and Lucas Havrisik comes in and goes 5 for 5 and kicks the field goal at the end of the game that ends up being the kick to give you a 2-possession lead with less than 2 minutes left. Just an interesting subplot there. So now the Packers get set for Arizona this coming Sunday. Yeah, they're 3-1-1 coming out of the game this Sunday. They are in first place. We'll take a lap through the NFL here in a second. But next up at Arizona, Kyler Murray did not play for Arizona, although I think they have Jacoby Brissett, who's sort of the new age Ryan Fitzpatrick, where he's just all over the league. And if they need him for 2 or 3 weeks, he seems to do well. And then people start to think, oh, maybe he should be the starting quarterback. And then that never goes well in the long term. That was always Ryan Fitzpatrick's role, where he would light it up as a backup for 2 or 3 weeks. Everybody would start thinking, God, this guy should be starting somewhere. And then he'd sign a starter's deal. And then 8 weeks into that, okay, no, thank you, no more, no mas. And then he'd do the whole cycle over again. Jacoby Brissett's kind of like that, where he'll get in for a week or 2 or 3 and looks pretty good. But over the course of a 15, 16-game schedule, that's really not his role. But that would be the backup the Packers would face in Arizona. It is another 3:25 kickoff this coming Sunday. Packers open as 6.5-point favorites on the road against the Cardinals. Let's take a quick lap in the NFL. Broncos and Jets in London. I'm done with London games. I mean, I think we have one for the rest of the year. That was fun when they were doing 1 or 2 or even 3 a year where you had a game on at 8:30 or 9 o'clock in the morning. That was fun. It was different. It was a little curveball every week, though. So the Broncos escape with a 13-11 win. As we've been over many times on this podcast, I am in heavy on the Broncos on the over 9.5 total wins and on them to make the playoffs. And now I've got to bet on them to win the AFC West as well. So they get to 4-2, but you could not afford to lose to the Jets. For any of those bets to cash, that was a precarious spot on Sunday morning. So the Broncos get a win 13-11. Colts do beat the Cardinals, but a tight game, 31-27. Jacoby Brissett threw for 320 and 2 touchdowns for the Cardinals. Colts are 5-1. I still don't believe in them, but that is my Vikings this year. Remember last year, we always bet against the Vikings. We thought they were going to be the worst team in the league. They won 14 games, and I'd bet against them and bet against them and bet against them. They'd always keep winning. I think this year the Colts are the Vikings, where I just don't believe in them, but they're going to go win 13 games or something like that. They're 5-1 coming out of that win on Sunday. Chargers just get by the Dolphins, 29-27. Patriots win in New Orleans, 25-19. They're 4-2. Good news for my Mike Vrabel Coach of the Year bet. How about Aaron Rodgers? He throws for 235, 2 touchdowns, no turnovers. Steelers beat the Browns 23-9. They are 4-1 on the year. And after this Cardinal game, that next week is the Packers-Steelers game, Sunday Night Football in Pittsburgh. And that could be a 5-1 Steelers team taking on a 4-1 Packers team. Who do the Steelers have this week? They're at Cincy. Oh, they're there Thursday, though, so that's a short week. They are in Cincy on Thursday. Well, that would be a dream for the NFL to not only have that matchup in primetime, Rodgers against his old team, but then they're both good teams. They're both first-place teams. Cowboys losing Carolina, that makes me feel not good at all about that tie. Not that I felt good about it anyway. They lose 30-27. Another great day for Dak, but that defense could not get it done. Seahawks won in Jacksonville. We had them to cover 1. They won by 8. Rams got past the Ravens, not convincingly, though, 17-3, and there was still no Lamar Jackson in that game. I guess the Ravens have a bye this week, and then according to John Harbaugh, they're going to have Lamar Jackson back after that. Raiders double up the Titans 20-10. Baker Mayfield. The Bucs get a win over the Niners. Now, that does hurt my Niners AFC or NFC West future. I think I've said AFC West every time we reference that. Wake up, John. NFC West. It's not like the Niners just moved conferences. They've always been in the NFC West. I've got that future on them to win the division, so they lose. So now you've got a 3-way tie atop the NFC West with the Rams, Niners, and Seahawks all 4-2. Niners lost Fred Warner yesterday for the year, broken ankle. That is an all-pro linebacker, their best defender, so they just have a litany of injuries. Not feeling great, even though they're tied for first right now. Not feeling great about that future bet. I am feeling better now about this Baker Mayfield MVP bet we laid down at 13-1 before the weekend. He had another nice day, and the Buccaneers now are 5-1 on the year, and a big part of whether or not somebody wins the MVP, not just the numbers of the fourth quarter comebacks, but if that team is a 1 or a 2 seed come playoff time, that's another element, and that's right now where the Bucs are trending. And then last night, Lions lose in Kansas City. Huge fight at the end of that game once the game was over. 30-17, Travis Wood-Kelce had 6 catches for 78 yards. I think he avoided the kerfuffle at the end of it. The Chiefs back to 500 at 3-3. Lions fall to 4-2, and that is why the Packers are in first place at 3-1-1 as we wake up here on a Monday morning. Now, let's talk about the Badgers, then we'll wrap up on a quick Bucks tidbit. Woof. Just when you thought it couldn't get worse than it already was. Badgers go out, homecoming night, prime time. That'll be, I guess maybe the Oregon game could be prime time, but that's more of an Oregon thing and not a Badger thing. They go out there, and just when you think it can't get any lower, like the Maryland game felt like it was as low as it was going to get to me. You got dominated at home by Maryland, even though they've been okay this year, and they covered for us again this weekend. I think they lost, but they covered in a loss to Nebraska. And they don't look like a bad team necessarily, but I thought that was rock bottom. Losing at home with an extra week of prep to Maryland. Then you go out there against Iowa. And this is a team, by the way. This Badger team and Luke Fickell, they have been talking directly about this Iowa team the whole year leading into this game. Like, when we entered the year, that seemed to be the game. When you go back to last year, we talked about this in the Friday podcast. When you go back to last year at Kinnick Stadium, Badgers get their doors blown off 42-10. And heading into that game, I think at that point, take yourself back to last year. And remember, last year they were 5-2 before they lost whatever it was. Was it 5 straight games to end the year? But they were 5-2. And then that was a part of the 5 straight losses, getting their doors blown off at Kinnick Stadium in Iowa City, 42-10. Embarrassing. I still don't think it's as embarrassing as the effort at home against Minnesota in the regular season finale, but it was pretty embarrassing. As the coach would say in Letterkenny, it's bleeping embarrassing. But that's what they talked about all offseason and leading into this year. We've got to get back and get some revenge for that Iowa game. That was the one that seemed to stick in their ass more than anything when you go back to last year. Fickell was talking about it. Assistant coaches were talking about it. Players were talking about it, how they're going to get back and they're going to get some revenge for the way they got embarrassed at Iowa 42-10 last year. Well, not only do you not get revenge, you played worse and did it at home and lost 37-0. Ironic or not, on Saturday, they went to the 1980s uniforms and then got shut out at home for the first time since 1980. Unbelievable. You talked all offseason and heading into the year about that Iowa homecoming game, and then you puked on yourself again and were never in the game. The game was over after the first quarter. Hunter Simmons is not it. He throws 2 picks directly to Iowa. And what was it, 20-0 or 23-0 at the end of the first quarter? It was over. 37-0 spanking in front of the home crowd. More booing. Go boo at a bar. More booing. More fire Fickell chants. We'll see what Barry Alvarez has to say on his radio show tonight. Remember, we played that audio 2 weeks ago, and he was upset. He called the Badger fans, what was it, disrespectful or despicable, I think was the word he used. He called us despicable. You're despicable. That's the word he used. And remember, we played the audio, and I said, I know Barry's heart's in the right place. His heart's with the program. He wants positivity for the program, but he's disconnected on this take. I wonder what he's going to have to say now after that embarrassment. Are you still going to be calling fans despicable and spoiled after a 37-0 home loss on homecoming in prime time to get worked like that by a mediocre Iowa team? And the Badgers at this point, when you look at the landscape of the Big Ten, they're the worst team. They are the worst team in the Big Ten. I cannot believe I'm saying that in halfway through year 3 of Fickell. When Fickell took over, at worst, this was a middle-of-the-road Big Ten team. They had been an upper-half team, and like we talked about, a part of that could be the Big Ten West, the weaker schedule, all of that. But when we were at the end of the Chris Leonard era, that was a slightly better than middle-of-the-pack team. And the idea in bringing Fickell in was to get back to being a top-tier team, a top 4 or 5 team in the Big Ten. And instead of that, they are now the 18th team of 18 Big Ten teams. Northwestern is better. Purdue is better. The only team that you could have said they were better than for a week or two there was UCLA. UCLA fired their coach, and now they've won 2 games in a row with their interim coach. Maybe not a bad move there. They are the worst team. The Badgers are the worst team. In an 18-team conference, the Wisconsin Badgers under Luke Fickell are the worst team in an 18-team conference. Now, Luke Fickell was emotional. I'm sure he's bummed out, but figure it out, fella. This is what he had to say in the postgame. This is about 45 seconds.
Luke, I know you mentioned that this is new territory for you. There's a lot moving fast, but What is step one in this process in terms of, again, you mentioned a little bit of self-evaluation. Is it talking with your staff? Is it talking with the locker room? What's, again, step one after today?
I think that's going to have to be something I got to think about tonight. There's a lot of step ones, unfortunately, in my head right now. Step one is making sure that we find the guys that are going to compete, to find the guys that are going to fight, find the guys that are going to ride right along with you. And, it's hard to figure that out sometimes, but when you press play on the tapes, it's not nearly as hard. And so we have to do a better job of figuring out which ones those are. If those are really young guys, then we're going to have to do some things that only really young guys can do. But as of right now, there's a lot of step ones. I think step one is not giving in on each other, start making some hasteful decisions, especially decisions, at this moment for,
like firing the coach?
Me in a lot of ways, because this is a really emotional time right now.
I'm sure it is, but it's time. It is time to move on. And I am not normally somebody who would advocate for somebody else losing their job. I feel less uneasy about it when the person losing their job is going to be given a $25 million check or a $40. There are so many variety of reports out there about what the buyout actually is. I've read $40 million. I've read $25 million. Whatever. Luke Fickell. When you say they should fire Luke Fickell, I do feel bad about saying somebody should be fired from their job. I feel way less bad when they are going to get a 10-figure check to be told to go home. Imagine doing your job so bad that they give you $25 million to go home. Incredible. Credit to him and credit to his agent when they signed that contract. But it's time. You've got to move on. This is not going to get turned around. There is no path to turn this around. I guess you can have a debate about the merits of firing a coach in season. I guess let him finish the year. Now, like we just said, though, UCLA fired their coach, and they immediately got a couple of wins. Would that happen if you gave the reins to Jeff Grimes or Mike Tressel? Those are the two most likely guys that I would think would take over as the head coach for the rest of the year. Maybe you do get a little bump there and you win a game or two toward the end of the year. But as it stands right now, there's no turning around. This is over. The Fickell era is over. Like I've said a million times, I, like a lot of people when they hired him, thought it was a home run hire, thought it was the perfect fit. It hasn't worked out. It's time to move on. And you can't worry about the buyout anymore. In this era of college football, if you are worried about a $25 million buyout, and it's a lot of money, $40 million buyout, whatever, if you can't do that, and you're going to let this guy coach for 2 more years and put this program further behind for 2 more years because you don't want to pay the buyout, then quite simply, you are a minor league college football program. You are a Mickey Mouse program if you don't pay this buyout and move on. Now, whether you do it in the year or at the end of the year, I don't care. I think the money's the same either way. If you want to see him finish the year just for the sake of finishing in the year or for the sake of you don't think it's going to get any better anyway, let him finish this year and then totally clean house and burn it to the ground and build it up in the offseason. Fine. I don't care. I don't care if you do it today or you do it whenever. When does the season end? I mean, the season's over, but when does it end? So they play Minnesota on Saturday, November 29th. So whether you do it now or you fire him on Sunday, November 30th, it does not matter to me. But you have to move on at the end of this year before you dig yourself an even bigger hole for the next guy to pull out of. It's going to be a tough enough job anyway with where they are right now in the Big Ten standings and trying to get this spun back in the right direction. If you give him another year or a year after that just because you don't want to pay the buyout, look no further than Penn State. Penn State fired James Franklin over the weekend after his team now started 0-3 in Big Ten play. He had, I think, a winning percentage of almost 700 at Penn State. Penn State was in the college football playoff last year. And let me pull up their schedule. I'm pretty sure not only was Penn State in the college football playoff, did they not win 2 games? I think they were into the semifinals. They were one of 4 teams remaining for a chance at a national title. 2024 Penn State. Yes, they beat SMU, they beat Boise, and lost to Notre Dame in the semifinal round at the Orange Bowl. So Penn State last year was a win away from the national title game, and they're off to a 3-3 start and an 0-3 start in Big Ten play. And they fired Franklin, and they paid him $49 million to walk away at the end of a great 12-year run where they couldn't really get over the hump, but they were always winning 8, 9, 10 games. Like I said, last year they were a win away from the national title game. If a program like that is willing to pay a guy $49 million to walk away, a guy that almost got them to the national title game last year, who has a run of success and a win-loss record that, like I said, a 700 winning percentage, if they're going to pay that buyout to get rid of him, if you can't pay Fickell $25 million, then you simply are not on the same playing field as the rest of the major programs in college football. And if that's what it is, then that's what it is, and say that's what it is. But if you're not willing to pay this buyout and be done with this and move on, then this is a minor league college football program. Now, the other conversation that you can have revolves around Chris McIntosh, the AD, the guy who hired Fickell. It's his biggest move as AD. It has not worked out. When you look around the Badger athletics program, I guess the question would become in relation to Chris McIntosh, what has gotten better in McIntosh's tenure? Greg Gard and the basketball program have been fantastic, but that was already there before McIntosh got there. The women's hockey program is the best in the country, but that was already the case before McIntosh got there. The volleyball program has been great, and that sport continues to grow, but that was already pretty good by the time McIntosh got there. So the question is, what has gotten better with McIntosh? And that's a debate maybe for a different day, but I think that's also going to be a question mark, not just with Fickell, but do you also move on from McIntosh and redo the whole thing? Bring in a new AD, maybe you bring in Barry, maybe you bring the Godfather back for a year to bring some stability while you find the next AD, but it's over. This is over, and this team is probably going to finish 2-10 this year. They play number 1 Ohio State on Saturday. What do you think? They lost 37-0 to Iowa. This team could legitimately, if Ohio State played balls to the wall for this entire game on Saturday, I think you could lose 75-0. I don't think that's insane. And I also think you go to Oregon next week, you could lose that game 70-0. So this could be, you could lose the next 2 games by a combined 150-0, and I am not remotely joking about that being a potential combined final score. This Badger team is averaging 6.7 points per game in the Big Ten. 6.7, and it might go down in the next 2 weeks with number 1 Ohio State and number 8 Oregon. There's not a win on this list anymore, as far as I'm concerned. You've got Washington at home on the 8th. That'll probably be an 11 a.m. game. You go to number 3 Indiana still. You could lose that game 70-0. This is going to get real ugly. Real ugly. And it already is, but it's going to get even uglier by the time we get to the end of the season. I think we're definitely headed to a 2-10 year, and then likely the end of Fickell at the end of this year. But you have to be willing at this point to pay that, move on, eat the cost, whatever it takes, call the donors, get the donors on the line, and try to get this spun back in the right direction starting next year. And now, if you finish this year 2-10, which you're going to, and you fire Fickell and you have to build the whole thing up from the ground again, we're looking at a complete rebuild. I mean, you're looking at a 3 to 5 years, I would think, to try to get this thing back to respectability. That's how quickly it fell apart. I'll tell you one thing about Jim Leonhard. Remember on a podcast, I think 2 or 3 episodes ago, I think when they were 2-0 and maybe heading into the Alabama game or the Maryland game, or they were 2-1, and I said, we had that emailer that talked about the Big Ten West and maybe the 9 to 10 win years and the Rose Bowl trips were kind of a mirage under Paul Chryst and even Brett Bielema because they were feasting on being fortunate to be in the weakest part of the conference in the Big Ten West and not playing a super difficult non-conference schedule. So that allowed for them to be 9-3, 10-2 playing Rose Bowls. And when we talked about that email, I said, yeah, I can see that. That may be true. And maybe Jim Leonhard, if you just would have hired Jim Leonhard instead of going to Fickell, would you be in a different spot? I think my argument was, I think you're still a 5, 6, 7 win team at best if you go with Leonhard instead of Fickell. Well, I'll tell you one thing if they would have gone with Jim Leonhard. This team was not going to be 2-10. That was not going to happen. I'm not saying you're in a way better situation if you just hire Leonhard. Maybe you're a 4 or 5 win team, but that's a hell of a lot better than 2-10. And I don't think they'd be getting embarrassed at homecoming 37-0 at the hands of Iowa. So that argument now falls apart that, yeah, maybe with Leonhard you're in no better of a place or maybe even a slightly worse place, but you're not, now that we've seen how this has played out, you're not anywhere close to being that bad if you just go with Jim Leonhard and you go with the hometown kid and see what he can do instead of Fickell. Again, revisionist history. I thought Fickell was the right hire. A lot of us did. And it just has been an abject disaster. So, yeah, you've got Ohio State. Do we have a spread on this game? It's going to be 40 points. We don't have a spread. Do we not have a spread yet? We don't have a spread yet. Okay, so that is next up. Number 1, Ohio State at Camp Randall, a 2:30 kickoff on Saturday. I don't think I'm going to waste a minute. Are you? Are you going to watch that game? I guess for the purpose of the podcast, I'll check in on it. But, man, it is ugly in Madison. And then let's wrap up on the Bucs real quick. I just have a quick clip I want to play you. Bucs had a preseason game last night with all the other stuff going on. I'm sure nobody was paying attention to it. However, It was the first time that we had Giannis and Miles Turner on the floor together. They beat the Bulls 127-121. The Bucks are 3-0 in the preseason. And I think you're seeing, like we went over when we talked about how much younger the roster is now, I think you're seeing some youthful exuberance, some excitement around this team. Here's what Miles Turner had to say last night in the postgame about his first experience with Giannis in terms of in-game on the floor.
What was it like to play with Giannis in a game here for the first time?
Man, he about to change my life, man. It's different, man. You know, just being on the other side of it, you know, it's interesting. You know, it's just the mental warfare that goes into game plan for someone like Giannis. He just makes the game so easy for guys around him. And then, you know, we got his back in the end as well. So, no, it's all good stuff, man.
He's going to change my life.
Change my life, man. It's different, man.
I'm optimistic. I know we talked a lot about Giannis last week and the rumors, and is he on a trial membership with this team right now for the next year before deciding whether or not he wants to stay here for the next 2 or 3 years with a very young team? I think that is the case and is still the case. But the early returns, and it's the preseason, I get it, but the early returns from the way they've looked in the preseason, I would say are pretty encouraging. They've got one more preseason game left, and then I think it's next week, Wednesday or Thursday, they get the regular season started. But really good effort from Miles Turner and Giannis, their first night on the floor together last night in Chicago. The over-under is 43.5. I am on the over. That is already, we are heavy. Celebratory John on Saturday night, after the Brewers beat the Cubs, had a couple whiskeys and then went on the sportsbook account. Never a good combination, but Saturday night, celebratory, possibly a little tipsy John, put a large bet on the Bucks over 43.5 wins on the year, and I'm feeling pretty good about it with the way this team looks, at least right now. That'll do it for us here. Victory Monday. We are going to put the highlight reel in here, Packers and Brewers, on a Victory Monday. And then we'll get out for the day. We will chat with you Friday. We will already have 3 championship series games in the rearview mirror. We're going to have a real good idea of where this Brewer team stands in relation to a World Series on Friday. We'll get set for Packers and Cardinals, and I guess Badgers, Ohio State on Saturday. Have a happy, safe work week. We'll chat with you then.
Secondary, 3rd and 10 for Love. Here comes Hendrickson. There goes Love. Downfield. Caught by Golden. What a catch.
I love the Green Bay Packers, man.
And Jacobs here. Crawling in. Touchdown.
Gosh, I like the Packers. I'd do anything for the Packers.
Pomerantz deals. Fly ball left center. Crow Armstrong is on the move. He's running out of room. It's gone.
Woo! It's 2nd down, 7. And Jacobs. Oh, look it. Right down the middle. Touchdown.
Another one.
The pitch. Shanna drive out to left. It is back. Hap at the track at the wall. Bye. Baseball.
Just look at that. He hit the full. That gets a free stay.
Fade to Jacobs. It's off to the tight end. Kraft. Galloping inside. Touchdown.
Great places, South Dakota.
Here's the pitch. And Terang, a fly ball to center. Crow Armstrong's back at the track. It is gone. Bryce Terang. An October moment.
Oh, yeah. They brought this kid in Thursday night, practiced Friday. They like what they saw. Here's a 39-yard field goal, and he drills it home.
And there is your dagger.
Green Bay deals to Carson Kelly. Swinging a bouncer to short. Ortiz has it. And the Brewers are going to the championship series. They take 3 of 5 from the Chicago Cubs. And the Brewers have a date with the Dodgers.
The Brewers are